Testing, testing. All right. It seems we're good. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Shiva. Welcome to the stream. Ooh, reading stream. Really hope we can eventually review, collab, read stuff together. We could. It all depends on what we find to read, of course. Because not every story is going to make a good, like, on and off people all swapping. Basically, we just have to find the right story that will fit the swapping nature. Something tasteful, of course. Well, one of the more ideal things that is good for a swapping nature could potentially be a visual novel of some sort. Much like Fate Grand Order's story, or you know how Ozzy and Ghastly are doing Dandelion tomorrow. That's another good example. I remember the original idea was to get me and Ash to voice things, but no one ever contacted us about that further. Wah. The girlies would eat it up. I don't know. I just don't know. But oh, ad's about to play for people who don't have a sub. Intent nudge nudge. Anyways, today we're going to be reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, starting at story 6, which is The Man with the Twisted Lip. Let me get out my book here. Hold on, I'm gonna make myself invisible while I peruse my menus. No, not that one. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I got my book. Alright, gonna make me visible once more. There we go. Hope y'all are ready. Alright, that's positioned quite nicely. Let me take a quick swing. There's the ads, but I don't know who all is here in the first place. Actually, while the ad's playing, I I was checking over on my YouTube account because I was seeing if yesterday's VOD was ready, and then I saw I didn't export it, so I had to go export it. But before that, when I switched over to that account, I saw a bunch of like spam messages in the comments of videos. Ah, shame. It was basically just the same message across various accounts with sexualized images of women. Nothing too showy, but very not safe for work. Yeah. Shame it was spam and not real. I mean, not the pictures. I mean, like just comments in general. I mean, I've gotten a couple of comments on videos that look legit, so I'm not really concerned. It was just disappointment that spam appeared at all. It's not much you can really do about it except report it and just like, yeah, this is spam. Yeah, I found that this morning. I saw 6 notifications. I'm like, oh, something happened. Oh, comments? Oh shit, they all say the same thing. Damn. Spam hurts the account though, you know? Gotta delete those or report when you can. Yeah. I was I was like, I don't know, is that okay to just have them sit there? It's like, nah, I should report them. It's probably bad if they're there. Granted, I get a lot of spam bots on Twitter, but that's just Twitter these days. Can't really do much about that. Anyways, now the ad for all the plebs. I kid. Now that all the ads are done, and just in case someone else is watching beside you, it's time to take them a look. It's time. Why did I say time to take them a look over? No, it's time to start reading. What am I on about? Story 6: The Man with the Twisted Lip. Let me enlarge this a bit. There we go. Isa Winty, or Whitley? Why did someone have to start this story with a weird last name? It's not that bad, but it looks like Whitney. I'm going to say it like that. Isa Whitney, he, brother of the late Elsa Whitney, D.D. principal of the Technological College of St. George, was much addicted to opium. The habit grew upon him, as I understood, from some foolish freak when he was out at college. For having read De Quincey's description of his dreams and sensations, he had drenched his tobacco with laudanum. Laudanum? What is that? In an attempt to produce the same effect. That's our first Google word of the day. It's a tincture of opium containing approximately 10% powdered opium by weight. It is prepared by dissolving extracts from opium poppy in alcohol, reddish brown in color and extremely bitter. Contains several opium alkaloids, including morphine and codeine. I think that's how you do that. Pronounce that. All right. He found, as so many have done, that the practice is easier to obtain than get rid of, and for many years he continued to be a slave to the drug, an object of mingled horror and pity to his friends and relatives. I can see him now with yellow, pasty face, drooping lips and pin-pointed pupils, all huddled in a chair, the wreck and ruin of a noble man. One night, it was June, '89, there came a ring to my bell about the hour or when a man gives his first yawn and glances at the clock. I sat up in my chair, and my wife laid her needlework down in her lap and made a little face of disappointment. Hi, MC, welcome to the stream. We're reading Sherlock Holmes today. Welcome, welcome, welcome. What's with the Does it concern you that we're massive nerds? That's Let's just use. Like an extinct one? I'm very confused. Excited? Ah, okay. I got very thrown off. Oh wait, yeah, MC said they were German recently, didn't they? Yeah, is more of a questioning or concern sound. O is more of a questioning of positive or interest. Like I literally just remembered that because you were talking with Ash about cars. I glanced over and I saw that bit. Anyways, continuing on. A patient, she said. You'll have to go out. I'm a German I don't know what that word means. Merchnik. I don't know what that word means. I groaned, for I had newly come back from a weary day. From a weary day. We heard the doors open, a few hurried words, and then quickly steps upon the linoleum. Our own door flew open, and a lady, clad in some dark-colored stuff with a black veil, entered the room. You will excuse my calling so late, she said. She began, and then, suddenly losing her self-control, she ran forward, threw her arms about my wife's neck, sobbing upon her shoulder. Oh, I'm in such trouble, she cried. I do so want a little help. Mechanic, a guy who repairs cars, damn it. Okay. You know, I should have been able to guess that with just changing the K to a C. Man, I am failing at cognates right now. That's a word that's spelled similar or exactly to another word in another language. Why, said my wife, pulling up her veil. It is Kate Whitney. Have you startled? How you startled me, Kate! I had no idea who you were when you came in. Your English is just fine. Yeah, mine isn't though. And I live here. Like I saw that and I immediately directed to myself, then I saw it was directed at MC, yeah. I didn't know what to do, so I came straight to you. That was always the way. Folks who were in grief came to my wife like birds to a lighthouse. Well, now I need to study English again because my first stream, or before my first stream, why did I read that as because? It was very sweet of you to come. Now, you must have some wine and water and sit here comfortably. Tell us all about it. Or would you rather I sent James off to bed? Oh, no, no. I want the doctor's advice and help too. It's about Isa. He's not been home for 2 days. I'm so frightened about him. It was not the first time she had spoken to us of her husband's trouble, to me as a doctor, to my wife as an old friend and school companion. We soothed and comforted her by such words as we could find. She knew where her husband was. Was it possible that we could bring him back to her? It would seem that it was. She had the surest information that of late he had, when the fit was on him, made use of opium den in the furthest east of the city. He threw his Hitherto his orgies had always been confined to one day. Um, Mr. Doyle. That word isn't as widespreading of use as it might be today. I get, I think he's trying to imply it as a general use of chaotic indulgence. But I'm gonna have to ask you to not. And he had come back, twitching and shattered in the evening. But now the spell had been upon him 48 hours, and he lay there doubtless among the dredge of the docks, breathing in the poison or sleeping off the effects. There he was to be found, she was sure of it, at the Bar of Gold in Upper Swandam Lane. But what was she to do? How could she, a young and timid woman, making her way into such a place and pluck her husband out from amongst the ruffians who surrounded him? That was the case. In course, there was but one way out of it. Might I not escort her to the place? And then, a second thought. Why should she come at all? I was Isa Whitney's medical adviser, and as such I had influence over him. I could manage it better if I were alone. I promised her on my word that I would send him home in a cab within 2 hours, if he were indeed at the address which he had given me. And so in 10 minutes I had left my armchair and cheery sitting room behind me, and was speeding eastward in a Hampson on a strange errand. As it seemed to me at the time, though the future only could show how strange it was to be. There was no greater difficulty in the first stage of my adventure. Upper Swandam Lane is a vile alley lurking behind a wharf, with lines on the north side of the river to the east of London Bridge. Between a slop shop and a gin shop, approaching by street a steep flight of stairs, leading down to the black gap like the mouth of a cave. I found the den of which I was in search. Ordering my cab to wait, I passed down the stairs, worn hollow in the centre by the ceaseless tread of drunken feet, and by the light of a flickering oil lamp above the door. I found the latch and made my way into the long, low, thick and heavy with brown opium smoke, and terraced with wooden breath, like the forecastles of an emigrant ship. That is a tough word to say. Emigrant. Immigrant? It's not immigrant because it doesn't start with an I. It's spelled Emigrant. I've seen this word in Pirates 101, so I know it's like ship related, but I don't know what that actually means. Time for our second Google search of the day. This is just a thing we have in reading streams, apparently. Not quite. It's spelled Emigrant. It means a person who leaves their country in order to settle permanently in another, but I learned that word was started with an I. Alright, what's the difference between immigrant and immigrant? The word immigrant is used when talking about the country moved to. Immigrant is used when talking about the country moved from. I was just reading that. Someone is an immigrant when they leave their country of origin, and an immigrant is when they arrive in their new country. Ah. I literally never heard anyone ever use the E version of this word. Unless they were mispronouncing immigrant on purpose to insult someone. Yes, Ghastly, it's story time! Which also means it's time to look up words. Very rare to use, especially because we are I'm the U.S. Few people emigrate from the U.S. They just call it moving. Time for me to knock the fuck out to your voice. Aw, that's adorable. Through the gloom one could dimly catch a glimpse of bodies lying in the strange, fantastic poses. Bowed shoulders, bent knees, and heads thrown back and chins pointing upwards, with here and there a dark, lackluster eye stood turned upon the newcomer. Sleep time for the little hellion. Shut. Out of the black shadows there glimmered little red circles of light, now bright, now faint as the burning poison waxed or waned in the bowls of the metal pipes. The most lay silent, and but some muttered to themselves, and others talked together in a strange, low, monotonous voice, their conversations coming in gushes, and then suddenly trailing off in silence, each mumbling out his own thoughts and paying little heed to the words of his neighbor. At the furthest end of the wall was a small brazier, in the burning charcoal, beside which, on a three-legged wooden stool, there sat a tall, thin old man, with his jaw resting upon his two fists and his elbows upon his knees, staring into the fire. As I entered, a solemn old Mallory attendant had hurried up with a pipe for me and a supply of the drug, beckoning me to an empty breath. "Thank you. I have not come to stay," said I. "There is a friend of mine here, Mr. Isa Whitney, and I wish to speak with him." There was a movement and an exclamation from my right, and peering through the gloom, I saw Whitney, pale, haggard, and unkempt, staring out at me. "My God, it's Watson!" he said. It was a pitiful state of reaction with every nerve in a twitter. "I say, Watson, what o'clock is it?" "Nearly 11. Of what day?" "Of Friday, June 19th. "Good heavens! I thought it was Wednesday." "It is Wednesday. What do you want to frighten a chap for?" He sank his face onto his arms and began to sob in a treble key, or in a high treble key. "I tell you that it is Friday, man. Your wife has been waiting these 2 days for you. You should be ashamed of yourself." "So I am, but you got mixed, Watson, for I've only been here a few hours. 3 pipes, 4 pipes. I forget how many, but I'll go home with you. I wouldn't frighten Kate. Poor little Kate. Give me your hat. Have you a cab?" "Yes, I have one waiting." "Then I shall go in it, but I must owe something. Find what I owe, Watson. I am all off colour. I can do nothing for myself." I walked down the narrow passage between the double row of sleepers, holding my breath to keep out the vile, stupefying fumes of the drug, and looking about for the manager. As I passed the tall man who sat by the brazier, I felt a sudden pluck at my shirt, and a low voice whisper, "Walk past me, and then look back at me." The words fell quite distinctly upon my ear. I glanced down. They could only have come from the old man at my side, and yet he sat now as absorbed as ever, very thin, very wrinkled, bent with age, an opium pipe dangling down from between his knees as though it had dropped in a sheer lassitude from his fingers. I took 2 steps forward and looked back. It took all my self-control to prevent me from breaking out into a cry of astonishment. He had turned his back so that none could see him but I. His form had filled out. His wrinkles were gone. The dull eyes had regained their fire, and there, sitting by the fire and grinning at my surprise, was none other than Sherlock Holmes. He made a slight motion to me to approach him, and instantly he turned his face half round to the company, once more subsided to a dauber in loose-lipped senility. Yeah, senility. "Holmes," I whispered, "what on earth are you doing in this den?" "As low as you can," he answered. "I have excellent ears. If you would have great kindness to get rid of that stoutish friend of yours, I could have been exceedingly glad to have a little talk with you. I have a cab outside." "Then pray send him home in it. You may safely trust him.
for he appears to be too lame to get into any mischief. I should recommend you also send a note by the cabman to your wife to say that you have thrown in your lot with me. If you will wait outside, I shall be with you in 5 minutes.
It was difficult to refuse any of Sherlock Holmes' requests, for they were always so exceedingly definite. Or definite? How would you pronounce this particular one? And put forward with such a quiet air of mastery. I almost said mystery, that wasn't right. I felt, however, that when Whitney was once confined to the cab, my mission was practically accomplished. For the rest, I could not wish anything better than to be associated with my friend in one of the singular adventures which were normal conditions of his exercise, or his that's the wrong word too, in the normal condition of his existence. In a few minutes I had written my note, paid Whitney's bill, led him out to the cab, and seen him driven through the darkness. In a short time a decrepit figure had emerged from the opium den. I was walking down the street with Sherlock Holmes. For 2 streets he shuffled along on with a bent back and uncertain foot. Then glancing quickly round he straightened himself out, and burst into a hearty fit of laughter. Good night, my loves. Alright, good night, MC. I wish you pleasant dreams.
Sleep well. I suppose, Watson, he said, you imagine that I had added opium smoking to cocaine injection and all the other little weaknesses which you have favored me with your medical views.
I was certainly surprised to find you there.
No, and more so than I to find you.
I came to find a friend.
And I to find an enemy.
An enemy?
Yes, one of my natural enemies, or shall I say my natural prey? Briefly, Watson, I am in the midst of a very remarkable inquiry. I have hoped to find a clue in the incoherent ramblings of those sots, as I have done before now. Had I even recognized in that den, my life would not have been worth an hour's purchase, for I have used it before now, for my own purposes, and the rascally Lecar who runs it has sworn to have vengeance upon me. There was a trap-door at the back of that building, near the court of Paul's Wharf, which could tell some strange tales of what had passed through upon the moonless nights.
What? You do not mean bodies?
Aye, bodies, Watson. We should be rich men if we had £1,000 for every poor devil who had been done to death in that den.
Yeah, I really need to make a background for the novel reading streams. Make a room with a large chair and fireplace. Probably a fez. I don't know about a fez, but everything else sounds nice. A fez would not fit with my attire. Actually, if we're talking my attire, maybe a courtyard looking over a koi pond. Yeah, I was thinking maybe outside for my attire of some sort. Maybe around a campfire near a koi pond, a lake, or like one of those Japanese. I wouldn't call it a garden, but it's more. Actually, no. I'm thinking just further in on the courtyard, like whenever they're sitting on the little porch bit. I think that'd be really, really cute. And they're just like having some tea. That'd be really cool. Where was I? Ah, here.
Aye, bodies, Watson. We should be rich men if we had £1,000 for every poor devil who's been done to death in that den. It's the vilest murder trap on the whole Riverside. I fear the Neville Street Clare has entered. And it never to leave it more. But our trap should be here.
He put 2 forefingers between his teeth and whistled shrilly, a single which was answered by a similar whistle from the distance, followed shortly by the rattle of wheels and a clink of horse hoofs.
"Now, Watson,"
said Holmes. A tall dog cart dashed up through the gloom, throwing out two golden tunnels of yellow light from its side lanterns.
"you'll come with me, won't you?"
If I can be of use.
"Oh, a trusty comrade is always of use, and a chancellor is still
What a. Yeah, that's supposed to be Chancellor, right? Chronicler?
still more. My room at the Cedars is a double-bedded one."
The Cedars.
"Yes, that is, Mr. St. Clair's house. I was staying there while he conducted the inquiry."
Where is it then?
"Near Lee, in Kent. We have a 7-mile ride before us."
But I am all in the dark.
"Of course you are. You'll all know all about it presently. Jump up here. All right. John, we shall not need you. Here's half-a-crown. Look out for me tomorrow, about 11. Give her her head. So long then."
Too immature for that. He flicked the horse with his whip, and dashed away through the endless succession of sombre and deserted streets, which widened gradually until we were flying across a broad balustraded bridge, with the murky river flowing sluggishly beneath us. Beyond lay another dull wilderness of bricks and mortar, its silence broken by the heavy regular footfall of the policeman, or the songs and shouts of some belated party of revellers. A dull rack was drifting slowly across the street, and a star or two twinkled gently here and there through the rifts of the clouds. Holmes drove in silence, with his head sunk upon his breast, the air of a man who is lost in thought, while I sat beside him curious to learn what this new quest, which would be seen to tax his powers so sorely, and yet afraid to break in upon the current of his thoughts. He had driven several miles, and were beginning to get to the fringe of the belt of the suburban villa, when he shook himself, shrugged his shoulders, and lit up his pipe with the air of a man who had been satisfied himself that he is acting for the best.
"You have a grand gift of silence, Watson," he said. "It makes you quite invaluable as a companion. Upon my word, it is a great thing for me to have someone to talk to, for my own thoughts are not over pleasant. I was wondering what I should say to this dear little woman tonight when she meets me at the door."
You forget I know nothing about it.
"I shall just have time to tell you the facts of the case before we get to Lee. It seems absurdly simple, and yet somehow I get nothing to go upon. There's plenty of thread, no doubt, but I can't get the end of it into my hand. Now, I'll state the case clearly and concisely to you, Watson, and maybe you can see a spark where all is dark to me."
Proceed, then.
"Some years ago, to be definite, in May 1884, there came to be Lee, a gentleman, Neville St. Clair by name, who appeared to have plenty of money. He took a large villa, laid out the grounds very nicely, and lived generally in good style. By degrees he made friends in the neighbourhood, and in 1887 he married the daughter of a local brewer, by whom he now has 2 children. He has no occupation, but was interested in several companies, and went into town as a rule in the morning, returning by 5:14 from the Cannon Street every night. Mr. St. Clair is now 37 years of age, is a man of temper and habit, a good husband and very affectionate father, and a man who is popular with all who know him. I may add that his old debts at the present moment, as far as I have been able to discern, is a total of £88 tens."
£88, 10. Oh, that's probably like 10 shillings? It's an S, so I'm gonna guess shillings.
£88 and 10 shillings. Well, he has 220 £220 standing to his credit in the Capital and Counties Bank. There's no reason, therefore, to think money troubles have been weighing upon his mind. Last Monday, Mr. Neville Sinclair went to town rather earlier than usual, remarking before he started that he had two important commissions to perform, that he would bring his little boy home a box of bricks. Now, by the merest chance, his wife received a telegram upon this same Monday, very shortly after departure, to the effect that a small parcel of considerable value, which she had been expecting, was waiting for her at the office of Aberdeen Shipping Company. Now, you're well up in your London, you will know the office of the company is in Fresno Street, which branches out to the Upper Swandam Lane, which you found me tonight. Mrs. Sinclair had her lunch, started for the city, did some shopping, proceeded to the company office, got her packet, found herself at exactly E435 walking through Swandam Lane on her way back to the station. Have you followed me so far? It is very clear. Remember, Monday was exceedingly hot, and Mrs. Sinclair walked slowly, glancing about in the hopes of seeing a cab, as she did not like the neighborhood in which she found herself. While she was walking in her way down Swandam Lane, she suddenly heard an ejaculation or cry,
Please stop using that as a verb.
and was struck cold to see her husband looking down at her, and it seemed to her beckoning to her from a second-floor window. The window was open. She distinctly saw his face, which she describes as being terribly agitated. He waved his hands frantically to her, and then vanished from the window so suddenly.
I think Conan Doyle had some intrusive thoughts when he was writing these. Hi, Mr. Mustache. Welcome to the stream. Also, I don't know why I didn't greet you earlier. For some reason, I thought your previous comment was by MC, but MC already went to bed. I'm so sorry. Hold on, I have some messages. Oh, one was just Shiva's response there. There's that. Okay. Indy went live. I was gonna say I've been here a bit, been listening while doing a small homebrew project in D&D for someone. Ah, I hope you've been enjoying yourself then.
The window was open, and
Oh wait, no, I read that.
He waved his hands frantically to her, then vanished from the window so suddenly, seemed to her she had been plucked back by some irresistible force from behind. One singular point which struck her quite quick feminine eye was though he wore some dark coat, such as he had started to town with, he had neither collar nor necktie. Convinced that something was amiss with him, she rushed down the steps for the house was none other than the opium den in which she found me tonight, and running through the front door, she attempted to ascend the stairs which led to the first floor. At the foot of the stairs, however, she met Lasker, scoundrel of whom I have spoken, who thrust her back, and aided by Dane, who acts as an assistant there, pushed her out into the street. With the most maddening doubts and fears, she rushed down the lane, and by rare good fortune met in Fresco Street a number of constables with an inspector, all on their way to their beat. The inspector and two men accompanied her back. In spite of the continued resistance of the proprietor, they made their way to the room in which Mr. Sinclair had last been seen. There was no sign of him there. In fact, the whole of that floor, though there was no one to be found save a crippled watch of hideous aspect, which seems made his home there.
Oh, wretch. Why don't you read that as watch? Basically, someone wants to make a stat page for Nobunaga if she had an actual Naga. It's been interesting.
Murphy and Alaska stoutly swore that no one else had been in the front room during the afternoon. So determined was her denial that the inspector was staggered, almost come to believe that Mrs. St. Clair had been deluded and with a cry she sprang at a small box which lay upon the table and tore the lid open. Only there fell a cascade of children's bricks, the toy he had promised to bring home. This discovery, and the evident confusion with the crippled showed, or maybe It made the inspector realize the matter was serious. The rooms were carefully examined. The results all pointed to an abominable crime. The front room was painfully furnished as a sitting room, or plainly furnished as a sitting room, and led to a small bedroom, which looked out upon the back of one of the wharfs. Behind the wharf and the bedroom window was a narrow strip, which is dry at low tide, but is covered at high tide, which had at least 4.5 feet of water. The bedroom window was a broad one, and opened from below. On examination, traces of blood were seen upon the window sill, and scattered drops were visible upon the wooden floor of the bedroom. Thrust away behind a curtain in the front room were all the clothes of Mr. Neville St. Clair, with the exception of his coat, his boots, his socks, his hat, and his watch. All were there. There were no signs of violence upon any of his garments. There were no other traces of Mr. Neville St. Clair. Out the window he must apparently have gone, for no other exit could have been discovered. The ominous blood stain upon the sill gave little promise that he could save himself by swimming, for the tide was at its very highest at the moment of the tragedy. And now, as to the villain who seems to be immediately implicated in the matter, the Lascar was known to be a man of vilest antecedents.
What does that word mean? And how do you say it? Time to Google another word. Antecedent. A thing or event that exists before or logically precedes another. Adjective, preceding in time or order, previous or pre-existing. And see, I think that actually I can copy and paste the word for you. I mean, I get its definition now and what it's trying to say, but now the matter of pronouncing it. Antecedent? Not sure.
But as by Mrs. St. Clair's story, he was known to have been at the foot of the stair within very few seconds of her husband's appearance at the window.
Antecedent. Antecedent. It's a difficult one. C, like saying the letter C. See, I guessed that. Antecedent. That is a weird word. But this is what we do in reading streams. We learn new old words. And get concerned every time they use the verb ejaculated.
He could hardly have been more than accessory to the crime.
Sesame Street murder mystery episode.
His defense was one of absolute ignorance, and he protested that he had no knowledge of the doings of Hugh Bourne, his lodger, and he could not account in any way to the presence of the missing gentleman's clothes. So much for the Lascar manager. Now for the sinister cripple who lives upon the second floor of the opium den, who's certainly the last human being whose eyes rest upon Neville St. Clair. His name is Hugh Bourne. and his hideous face is one which is familiar to every man who owes much to the city. He is a professional beggar. Though in order to avoid police regulation, he pretends to small trade in wax vestias, some little distance down on Threadneedle Street. Upon the left-hand side, there is, as may have remarked, a small angle in the wall. Here it is that this creature takes his daily seat, crossed legs with a tiny stock of matches on his lap. He is a piteous spectacle. A small rain of charity descended into the greasy leather cap which lies upon the pavement behind him. I have watched the fellow more than once before, however I thought making his professional acquaintance, and had been surprised at the harvest which he reaped in a short time. His appearance, you see, is so remarkable that no one can pass him without observing him. A shock of orange hair, a pale face disfigured by a horrible scar, which by its contraction has turned out that contraction. This contraction has turned up the outer edge of his upper lip, a bulldog chin, a pair of very penetrating dark eyes, which present a singular contrast to the color of his hair, all marked out from amid the common crowd of miscreants, and so wounds his wit, for he is ever ready with a reply to any piece of chaff which may be thrown at him by the passers-by. This is the man whom he has now learned to have been the lodger of the opium den, and have been the last man to see the gentleman of whom we are in quest.
But a cripple, said I. What could he have done single-handedly against a man in the prime of his life?
He is a cripple in the sense that he walks with a limp, but in other respects he appears to be a powerful and well-nurtured man. Certainly your medical expertise will tell you, Watson, that weakness in one limb is often compensated for by exceptional strength in the others.
Pray continue your narrative.
Mrs. Sinclair has fainted at the sight of blood upon the window, and she was escorted home in a cab by the police, and her presence can be of no help to them in their investigation. Inspector Barton, who had charge of the case, made a very careful examination of the premises, but without finding anything which threw any light upon the matter. One mistake had been made in not arresting Bourne instantly, as he allowed some few minutes during which he might have been communicated with his friends the Lascar, but this fault was soon remedied, and he was seized and searched without anything being found which could incriminate him. There were, it is true, some bloodstains upon his right shirt sleeve, but he pointed to his ring finger, which had been cut near the nail, explaining that the bleeding had come from there, adding that he had been to the window not long before, and that the stains which had been observed there had doubtless come from the same source. He denied strenuously having ever seen Mr. Neville Sinclair, and swore to the presence of the clothes in his room was as much of a mystery to him as to the police. As to Mrs. Sinclair's assertion that she had actually seen her husband at the window, he declared she must have been either mad or dreaming. He was removed, loudly protesting, to the police station, while the inspector remained upon the premises in the hope of ebbing tide might afford some fresh clue.
And it did.
And it did. They hardly found upon the mud bank what they feared to find. It was Neville Sinclair's coat, and not Neville Sinclair which lay uncovered at the tide's recede. What do you think they found in the pocket?
I can't imagine.
No, I don't think you would guess. Every pocket stuffed with pennies and halfpennies, 421 pennies and 270 halfpennies. It was no wonder that it had been swept away by the tide, but a human body is a different matter. The fierce eddy between the wharf and the house seemed likely enough that the weighted coat had remained when stripped from the body and been sunk away into the river.
But I understand that all the other clothes were found in the room. Will the body be dressed in a coat alone?
No, sir, but the fact had been met spectacularly well. Suppose this man Bourne had thrust Neville Sinclair through the window. There's no human eye which could have seen the deed. What would he do then? It'd be, of course, instantly strike him that he would get rid of the telltale garments. He would seize the coat, and then, be in an act of throwing it out, Would it then occur to him that it would swim and not sink? He has little time, for he has heard the scuffle downstairs when the wife tried to force her way up. Perhaps he had already heard that his lascar's his confederate up. At the police, not hurrying, not the police are hurrying up the street. There's not an instant to be lost. He rushed to some secret hoard which he accumulated the fruits of his beggary, and stuffed all the coins upon which he could lay his hands into the pocket to make sure the coat's sinking. He threw it out, and would have done the same with the other garments, but not he heard the rush of steps below, and just had time to close the window when the police appeared.
It certainly sounds feasible. Hold on.
Well, we'll take it as a working hypothesis for want of a better. Boone, as I've told you, was arrested and taken to the station, but it could not be shown that there had ever been anything before or anything against him. He had for years been known as a professional beggar, but his life appeared to be a very quiet and innocent one. There the matter stands at present, and the questions which had been solved, what Nibble Sinclair was doing in the opium den, what happened to him when there, where is he now, and what Hugh Bourne has done to or had to do with his disappearance, are all as far from solution as ever. I confess I cannot recall any case within my experience which I looked at the first glance so simple, yet presented with such difficulties.
While Sherlock Holmes had been detailing this singular series of events, we had been whirling through the outskirts of the great town until the last straggling houses had been left behind. We rattled along with a country head upon either side of us. Just as we finished, however, we drove through two scattered villages, where a few lights still glimmered in the windows.
"We are on the outskirts of Lee,"
said my companion.
"We have touched on 3 English counties in our short drive, starting in Middlesex, passing over an angle of Surrey and ending in Kent. See that light upon the trees?"
Doyle. No, that is the name of a place. That one's not on Doyle. That one's on Britain.
"That is, the Cedars. Besides that lamp sits a woman whose anxious ears have already, I have little doubt, caught the clink of our horses' feet."
Why are you not conducting the case from Baker Street? I asked.
"Because there are many inquiries which must be made out here. Mrs. Sinclair has most kindly put 2 rooms at my disposal. You may rest assured she'll have nothing but a welcome from my friend and colleague. I hate to meet her, Watson, when I have no news of her husband. Here we are. Whoa there, whoa."
We had pulled up in front of a large villa which stood within its own grounds. A stable boy had run out to the horse's head, and springing down, I followed Holmes up the small, winding, and gravel drive which led to the house. We approached the door, flew open, and a little blonde woman stood in the opening, clad in some sort of light moleste de soirée. I don't know what that means. I'm gonna guess it's some sort of nightgown, with a touch of fluffy pink chiffon at her neck and wrist. She stood with her figure outlining against the flood of light, one hand upon the door, one half raised in her eagerness, her body slightly bent, her head and face protruding, with eager eyes and parted lips a standing question. "Well?" she cried. "Well?" And then, seeing that there were 2 of us, gave a cry of hope which sank into a groan as she saw that my companion shook his head and shrugged his shoulders. "No good news?"
"None."
"No bad?"
"No."
"Thank God for that. Well, come in. You must be weary, for you've had a long day."
"This is my friend, Dr. Watson. He's been most vital use to me in several of my cases, and his lucky chance has been made it possible for me to bring him out and associate him with this investigation."
I'm delighted to see you, said she, pressing my hand warmly. You will, I'm sure, forgive anything that may be wanting in our arrangement, when you consider the blow which has come so suddenly upon us. My dear madam, said I am an old campaigner. If I were not, I can very well see that no apology is needed. If I can be of any assistance either to you or to my friend here, I shall indeed be indeed happy. Kind of messed up the inflections there. Let me give that another go. My dear madam, said I am an old campaigner, and if I were not, I can very well see that no apology is needed. If I can be of any assistance, either to you or to my friend here, I shall be indeed happy. There. I keep wanting to put be after indeed, because that's where my learning has put it, but I get that it's not the same language model. Now, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said the lady as we entered a well-lit dining room, upon the table of which a cold supper had been laid out. I should very much like to ask you one or two plain questions, to which I beg you give me a plain answer.
Certainly, madam.
Do not trouble about my feelings. I am not hysterical nor given to fainting. I simply wish to hear your real opinion.
Upon what points?
In your heart of hearts, do you think Neville is alive? Sherlock Holmes seemed to be embarrassed by the question. Frankly now, she repeated, standing upon the rug, looking keenly down at him as he leaned back in a basket chair.
Frankly then, madam, I do not.
You think he is dead?
I do.
Murdered?
I don't say that. Perhaps.
And on what day did he meet his death?
On Monday.
Then perhaps, Mr. Holmes, be good enough to explain how it is that I received a letter from him today. Sherlock Holmes sprang out of his chair as he had been galvanized. What? He roared. Yes, today. She stood smiling, holding a little slip of paper in the air.
May I see it?
Certainly. He snatched it from her in his eagerness. Smoothing it out upon the table, he drew by the lamp and examined it intently. I left my chair and was gazing at it over his shoulder. The envelope was a very coarse one. It was stamped with the Gravesend postmark from the day of that very day, or the day before, for it was considerably after midnight.
Coarse writing, muttered Holmes. Surely this is not your husband's writing, madam.
No, but the enclosure is.
Perceive also that whoever addressed the letter, and go and inquire to the address.
How can you tell that?
The name, you see. It's in perfectly black ink, which would write itself. The rest is in a greyish colour, shows the blot in the paper has been used. If it had been written straight off, then blotted, none would be in as deep black shade. This man has written the name, and there had been a pause before he wrote the address, which can only mean he was not familiar with it. It is, of course, a trifle, and there is nothing so important as trifles. Let us now see the letter. Ah, there has been an enclosed here.
Yes, there was a ring, his signet ring.
You're sure this is your husband's hand?
One of his hands.
One.
His hand when he wrote hurriedly. It is very unlike his usual writing, yet I know it well.
Dearest, do not be frightened. All will come well. There's a huge error which may take some time to rectify. Wait in patience, Neville. Written in pencil upon the flyleaf.
Written in pencil upon the flyleaf of a book, octo size, no watermark. No, this is still Holmes.
Written in pencil upon the flyleaf of a book, octo size, no watermark. Posted today in Gravesend by a man with a dirty thumb. Ha! The flap is engummed, if I am not very much in error, by a person who has been chewing tobacco. You've no doubt that your husband's hand, madam.
None. Neville wrote those words.
They were posted today in Gravesend. Well, Mrs. St. Clair, clouds lighten, though I should not venture to say that danger is over.
But he must be alive, Holmes.
Unless this is a clever forgery, need to put us on the wrong scent. A ring, after all, proves nothing. May have been taken from him.
No, it is his own writing.
Very well. It may, however, have been written on Monday, and only posted today.
That is possible.
If so, much may have happened between.
Oh, you must not discourage me, Mr. Holmes. I know that all is well with him. There is so keen a sympathy between us that I should know if evil came upon him. On that very day I saw him last, he's cutting himself in the bedroom, and yet I in the dining room rushed upstairs instantly with the utmost certainty that something had happened. Think I would respond to a trifle and yet be ignorant of his death.
I've seen so much not to know the impression of a woman may be more valuable than the conclusion of an analytical reasoner. And in this letter, you certainly have a very strong piece of evidence to corroborate your views. But if your husband is alive and able to write letters, why would he remain away from you?
I cannot imagine. It is unthinkable.
And on Monday he made no remarks before leaving you.
No,
And you were surprised to see him in Swandam Lane.
very much so.
With the window open.
Yes,
He might have called to you.
he might.
He only, as I understand, gave an inarticulate cry.
Yes,
Call for help, you thought.
yes, and he waved his hands.
But it might have been a cry of surprise, astonishment at the unexpected sight you might show him to throw up his hands.
It is possible.
Thought he was pulled back.
He disappeared so suddenly.
Might have leaped back. You did not see anyone else in the room.
No, but this horrible man confessed to have been there. The last ghost was afoot at the stairs.
Quite so. Your husband, as far as you could see, had his ordinary clothes on.
But without his collar or tie. I distinctly saw his bare throat.
Has he ever spoken of Sondham Lane?
Never,
Has he ever showed any signs of taking opium?
never.
Thank you, Mrs. Sinclair. These are practical points on which I wish to be absolutely clear. We shall now have a little supper and retire, for we may have a very busy day tomorrow.
A large and comfortable double-bedded room had been placed at our disposal. I was quickly between the sheets, for I was weary after my night of adventure. Sherlock Holmes was the man, however, who, when he had unsolved problems upon his mind, would go for days, even for a week, without rest, turning it over, rearranging his facts, looking at it from every point of view until he had either fathomed it or convinced himself that the data were insufficient. It was soon evident to me that he was now preparing for an all-night sitting. He took off his coat and waistcoat, put on a large blue dressing gown, and then wandered about the room collecting pillows from his bed and cushions from the sofa and armchair.
I am about to make a pillow fort, Watson. Would you like to join me?
Just these two grown-ass men, this famous detective duo, just in this pillow fort, just pondering this mystery. That's such a funny fucking image to me. Uh, apparently an ad's about to start soon. In that regard, I shall take a swing of water. And take a moment's reprieve as the ad plays. Gonna go take a quick pee. Alright, and we're back. With these constructed a soft of eastern divan, upon which he perched himself, of cross-legged, with an ounce of shag tobacco and a box of matches laid out in front of him. In the dim light of the lamp, I saw him sitting there, an old briar pipe between his lips, his eyes fixed vacantly upon the corner of the ceiling, the blue smoke curling up from him, silent, motionless, with the light shining upon his strong, set, aquiline features. So he sat as I dropped off to sleep, and so he sat with a sudden ejaculation caused me to wake up. Cease! I found the summer sun shining into the apartment. The pipe was still between his lips, the smoke still curled upward. The room was full of a dense tobacco haze, but nothing remained of the heap of shag which I had seen upon the previous night.
Awake, Watson.
Yes, yes,
Game for a morning drive.
certainly.
Then dress. No one is stirring yet. But I know where the stable boy sleeps. We shall soon have the trap out.
He chuckled to himself as he spoke. His eyes twinkled and seemed a different man and to the sombre thinker of the previous night. As I dressed, I glanced at my watch. It was no wonder that no one was stirring. It was 25 minutes past 4. I had hardly finished when Holmes returned with the news the boy was putting in the horse.
I want to test a little theory of mine,
said he, pulling on his boots.
I think, Watson, you are now standing in the presence of one of the most absolute fools in Europe. I deserve to be kicked from here to Charing Cross.
Sharing? Caring? It's Charing. Sharing?
To Charing Cross. But I think I have the key to the affair now.
And what is it? I asked, smiling.
In the bathroom,
he answered.
Oh, yes, I'm not joking.
He continued, seeing my look of incredulity.
I've just been there. I've taken it out. I've got it. And in this Gladstone bag. Come on, my boy. We shall see whether it will not fit the lock.
We made our way downstairs as quietly as possible, and out into the bright morning sunshine. In the road stood our horses and trap, with the half-clad stable boy waiting at the head. We both sprang in, and away we dashed down the London road. A few country carts were stirring and bearing in vegetables, to the metropolis, but the lines of the villa on either side were as silent and lifeless as the city in a dream. It had been
in some points a singular case,
said Holmes, flicking the horse on into a gallop.
I confess that I have been very blind as a mole. It was better to learn wisdom late than never to learn it at all.
In town, the earliest risers were just beginning to look sleepily from their windows as we drove through the streets, the Surrey inside. Passing down Waterloo Bridge Road, we crossed over the river, and dashing up Wellington Street, wheeled sharply to the right and found ourselves in Bow Street. Sherlock Holmes was well known to the force, and the 2 constables at the door saluted him. One of them held the horse's head, while the other let us in.
Who's on duty?
asked Holmes. Inspector Bradstreet, sir.
Oh, Bradstreet, how are you? Inspector Bradstreet, sir. Oh, Bradstreet, how are you?
A tall, stout officer had come down the stone-flagged passage in a peaked cap and frog jacket.
I wish you'd have a quiet word with you, Bradstreet.
Certainly, Holmes. Step in my room here. It was a small office-like room, with a huge ledger upon the table, and a telephone projecting from the wall. The inspector sat down at his desk. What can I do you, Holmes?
I call about that beggarman, Bourne. The one who was charged with being concerned in the disappearance of Mr. Neville Sinclair of Lee.
Yeah, he was brought and remanded for further inquiries.
So I've heard. You have him here.
In the cells?
Is he quiet?
Oh, he gives no trouble. He's a dirty scoundrel.
Dirty?
Yes, it is all we can do to make him wash his hands, and his face is as black as tinkers. Well, when once his case has been settled, he'll have his regular prison bath, and I think if you saw him, you would agree with me that he needs it.
Oh, I should like to see him very much.
Would you? That's easily done. Come this way. We can leave your bag.
No, I think I'll take it.
Very good. Come this way, if you please. He led us down a passage, opened a barred door, passed us down a winding stair, and brought us to a whitewashed corridor, lines of doors on each side. Third on the right, says, said the inspector. Here it is. He quickly shot back a panel in the upper part of the door and glanced through. and glanced through. He's asleep, said he. You can see him very well. We both put our eyes to the grate. Indeed, the prisoner lay with his face towards us, in a very deep sleep, breathing slowly and heavily. He was a middle-sized man, coarsely clad as became his calling, with a colored shirt protruding through the rent in his tattered coat. It was, as the inspector had said, extremely dirty. The grime which covered his face could not conceal its repulsive ugliness. A wheal from an old scar ran right across his eye to chin. By its contraction had turned up one side the upper lip, so that 3 teeth were exposed in a perpetual snarl. A shock of very bright red hair grew low over his eyes and forehead. He's a beauty, isn't he? Said the inspector.
He certainly needs a wash, remarked Holmes. I had an idea that he might. Took the liberty of bringing the tools with me.
He opened the Gladstone bag as he spoke, and took out, to my astonishment, a very large bath sponge. You're a funny one, chuckled the inspector.
Now, if you'll have a great goodness to open the door very quietly, I'll soon make him cut at a much more respectable figure.
Well, I don't know why not, said the inspector. He doesn't look a credit to the Bow Street cells, does he? He slipped his key into the lock, and we all very quietly entered the cell. A sleeper half turned, and then settled down once more in a deep slumber. Holmes stooped to the water jug, moistened his sponge, and then rubbed it twice vigorously across and down the prisoner's face.
Let me introduce you, he shouted, to Mr. Neville St. Clair of Lee, in the county of Kent.
Never my life had I seen such a sight. The man's face peeled off under the sponge like bark from a tree. Gone was the coarse brown tint. Gone, too, was the horrid scar which had seamed it across, and twisted lip which had given the repulsive sneer to the face. A twitch brought away the tangled red hair. There was sitting upon his bed was a pale, sad-faced, refined-looking man, black hair and smooth skin. So that's where the Kubrick got the "Here's Johnny scene from. I was actually starting to put together before Holmes said it too. Rubbing his eyes and staring about him with sleepy bewilderment. Then suddenly realizing the exposure, he broke into a scream and threw himself down with his face into the pillows. Good heavens! Cried the inspector. It isn't he, the missing man. I know him from the photograph. But then returned to a reckless air of a man who abandons himself to his destiny. Be it so, said he, and pray what am I charged with? With making away with Mr. Neville St. No, come, you can't be charged with that unless you can make a case of attempted suicide of it, said the inspector with a grin. Well, I've been 27 years in the force, but this really takes the cake. If I'm Mr. Neville St. Clair, it's obvious that no crime has been committed, and that, therefore, I am illegally detained.
No crime, but a great error has been committed, said Holmes. You would have done better to have trusted your wife. It was not the wife, it was the children, groaned the prisoner. God help me. I would not have them ashamed of their father. My God, what an exposure! What can I do? Sherlock Holmes sat beside him on the couch, patted him kindly on the shoulder. If you leave it to a court of law to clear up the matter, said he, of course you can hardly avoid publicity. On the other hand, if you convince the police authorities there's no possible case against you, I do not know there is any reason that the details should find their way into the papers. Inspector Bradstreet would, I am sure, make note upon anything which you might tell us and submit it to the proper authorities. The case would then never go to court at all. God bless you! Cried the prisoner passionately. I wouldn't have endured imprisonment, even execution, rather than let my miserable secret as a family blot to my children. You're the first to have ever heard my story. My father was a schoolmaster in the Chesterfield, where I received an excellent education. Travelled in my youth, took to the stage. Finally became a reporter on an evening paper in London. One day my editor wished to have a series of articles upon begging in the metropolis. I volunteered to supply them. There was the point from which all my adventures started. Only by trying begging as an amateur that I could get the facts upon which to base my articles. When an actor I had, of course, learned all the secrets of making up, been famous in the green room for my skill. I took advantage of my now attainments. I painted my face to make myself as pitiable as possible, but a good scar, fixed to one side of my lip in a twist by the aid of a small slip of flesh-coloured plaster. Then, with a red head of hair and an appropriate dress, I took my station in the business part of the city, ostensibly as a match seller, but really as a beggar. For 7 hours I plied my trade. When I returned home in the evening, and to my surprise, I had received no less than 26 shillings for what's lower than a shilling? I know it's not drachma, that's a different currency entirely. Let's look it up! A denarius. Yeah. Okay, pound, the shilling was an S, the penny by a D for denarius. About $4 today, which is a lot back then. Because you could survive on a lot. Or you can survive on not a lot. Because it said earlier that he had a bank account of like 220 pounds. And so he shouldn't be in need of money. I wrote my articles and thought a little more of the matter until some time later I backed a bill for a friend, had a writ served upon me for £25. I was at my wits' end where to get the money, so an idea came to me. I begged a fortnight's grace from the creditors, asked for a holiday from my employer, spent the time begging in the city under my disguise. 10 days, had the money, and paid the debt. Well, you can imagine how hard it was to settle down to arduous work for £2 a week, when I knew that I could earn as much in a day by smearing my face with a little paint, laying my cap on the ground, and sitting still. It was a long fight between my pride and the money, but the dollars won at last. I threw up reporting, sat day after day in the corner which I had first chosen, inspiring pity by my ghastly face, filling my pockets with coppers. Only one man knew my secret. He was the keeper of the low den when I used to lodge in Swindon Lane, which I could every morning emerge as a squalling beggar, in the evening transform myself into a well-dressed man about town. This fellow at Lascar was well paid me. I
me for his rooms, so I knew that my secret was safe in his possession. Well, very soon I found my savings considerable sums of money. I do not mean that any beggar on the streets of London could earn £700 a year, which is less than my average taking, but an exceptional advantage in my powers of make-up and also a facility of reproacher, which improved my practice and made me quite a recognizable character in the city. All day a stream of pennies, varied by silver, poured in upon me. It was a very bad day when I failed to take £2. As I grew richer, I grew more ambitious, took a house in the country, and eventually married, without anyone having a suspicion as to my real occupation. Wait, this was all before you got married? Jesus Christ, dude. My dear wife knew I had business in the city, and little knew that. And little knew what. Last Monday, I had finished for the day, and was dressing in my room above the opium den, looked out the window, saw to my whole astonishment, my wife was standing in the street, eyes fixed full upon me. Grace gave a cry of surprise, threw my arms in the air to cover my face, and rushed to my confidant, the Lascar, and entreated him to prevent anyone from coming up to me. I heard from her voice downstairs. I knew she could not assent, so if I threw off my clothes, pulled on those of a beggar, and put on my pigment in a wig. Okay, I'm going to stop him there for a moment. It would have been a much better idea to been like, it would have been a much better idea for him to continue, like, finish his changing, and then, like, meet her when she got up there, be like, oh yeah, I just had some business here. Or, you don't need to worry about it. Just, I was consulting with this guy. Make a cover story there. Come on, that would have been the easy way out of this. She already saw you as this, as your actual self in there. Stage your actual self in there, and do like a quick cover story. You could have gotten out of this scot-free. Also, what do you mean, goddammit, Doyle? What happened? What word did I miss? Even a wife's eyes could not pierce so complete a disguise. Then it occurred to me there might be a search in the room. Clothes might betray me. I threw open the window, reopening by my violence a small cut which I inflicted myself in the bedroom that morning. I seized my coat, which was weighed by the coppers which I had just transferred in from the leather bag which I carried in my takings. I hurled it out the window, just disappeared to the Thames. Other clothes would have followed, but at the moment there was a rush of constables up the stairs, and a few minutes after I found, although I confess to my relief, that instead of being identified as Mr. Neville St. Clair, I was arrested as his murderer. I do not know that there is anything else for me to explain. I was determined to preserve my disguise as long as possible, and hence my preference for a dirty face. Knowing that my wife would be terribly anxious, slipped off my ring, confided it to Lascar at a moment. No constable was watching me. Together with all, hurried squall, telling her there's no cause to fear.
The note only reached her yesterday, said Holmes.
Good God, what a week she must have spent.
Police?
The police have watched this Lascar, said Inspector Broadstreet, and I can quite understand he might find it difficult to post a letter unobserved. Probably he handed it to some sailor customer of his who forgot all about it for some days.
What was it?
Said Holmes, nodding approvingly.
I have no doubt of it, but have you not ever been prosecuted for begging?
Bloody time, but what was a fine to me?
It must be stopped here.
Or it must be stopped here. However, said Bradstreet, the police ought to hush things up. There be no more of Hugh Vaughan.
I swore it by the most solemn oath which a man can take.
In that case, I think it's probable no further steps may be taken. If you are found again, then all must come out. And I'm sure, Mr. Holmes, that we are very much indebted to you for having cleared this matter up. Wish you to have your which I wish I knew how you reach your results.
I reach this one, said my friend, by sitting upon 5 pillows, consuming an ounce of shag. I think, Watson, that if we drive to Baker Street, We shall be just in time for breakfast. I smoked a pipe all night and sat on some pillows like a kindergartner.
What?
Don't worry about it.
Alright, that's the end of story 6. Ooh. Yeah, he could have done much better in hiding all that if he had been like, oh, I had some business here, and Lester covered for him. Because clearly he was willing to cover for him. Anyways, I hope y'all enjoyed that one. Let's see. Huh? The stream is still stable. Hell yeah. Then again, I'm not like running a game, so maybe it's not getting too hot with this. That's actually really good to know. Even then again, I checked the VOD for yesterday's stream, and even though it said I was dropping frames, yeah, I think it's a heat problem. After so long, it gets a bit too hot, and it affects the stream output. It doesn't seem to affect anything else, weirdly enough, but it affects the bitrate of the stream when it gets too hot. I think that's what's going on. I'll have to get my computer looked over, see if I can't get that remedied. In the meantime, though, might need to clean out your fans too. They might have accumulated some dust. I don't have the tools to get to the fans. I need like these tiny ass screwdrivers to get there. And I don't have any. I should will they sell those at a standard hardware store, or do I have to go to like a tech store? Should probably also see if your computer defrags on a scheduled basis. Lately, maybe run disk cleanup. Disk cleanup? This computer doesn't have any disk slots. Also, side note, I did find it has a stylus. I've had this computer for over a year. It has a stylus in it because it has a touchscreen. It refers to internal disk storage, basically cleans up waste and unused files. I'll definitely have to look how to do that. You just type in disk cleanup in the search bar. All right, I'll look into it after stream if I remember to. But yeah, I found this computer has a stylus. I did not know that it did, but apparently it does. It's right here. I am now holding the stylus. Because what I'm using is actually according to this sticker that I don't ever take off, I'm using a Lenovo Yoga 9i. Wand to the gods. Yeah, my previous computer was also a Lenovo Yoga, and it served me pretty well. That's why I got another one whenever it was time to replace that one. And before that, I had a Toshiba that it lasted a while, but it wasn't very strong. It took a fair beating too. Specs are made on those, but I'll say the chassis for those damn things are made out of adamantium. What, on a Toshiba? Because I'll agree with you there. That computer had like no protection on one of the hinges for the longest time, and it was still going. Because I had dropped it a few times or it had fallen off something. I am far more careful with my laptops now. But yeah, it was a tough old bird. I could probably still boot it up if I gave it a charge now. I wouldn't do that with my previous Lenovo though because it has a bloated battery. The stylus has buttons on it for some reason. I wonder why. Probably some artsy reason. Yeah, I was gonna put this stylus away. Come on. What's the turn? There's the turn. Has to go in an exact way. Anyways, since the stream's still stable, how about another story? We can move on to story 7. The Adventure of the Blue Car not the blue burp, the blue carbuncle. No, actually, I'm going to take a drink of water first. Oh, actually, I never finished saying. When I looked over the VOD, despite what my bitrate was like reading on OBS, the VOD didn't show any like significant drops. So that's interesting. It showed a little bit of stutteriness, but not like enough to ruin the experience, which is the weirdest thing. It was also weird because it had gone into the red on the bitrate reading thing, but at the same time it was showing like my standard 25k ish kilobytes per second rate, and that I was still losing frames. But the VOD doesn't show any significant drop, so that's weird. Oh well, whatever. We're moving on. I had called upon my friend Sherlock Holmes upon the second morning after Christmas, with the intention of wishing him the compliments of the season. He was lounging about the sofa. Beauty of UDP, any problems that pop up are minuscule most of the time. Well, I had had a bad experience the previous day. I was pretty sure you were there, where it kept disconnecting. And I didn't want to risk that. So I had ended it early, even before there were any disconnections. But no, it apparently seemed to be running mostly fine. So yeah, very, very weird. He was lounging upon the sofa in a purple dressing gown, a pipe rack between his reach on the right, and a pile of crumpled morning papers, evidently newly studied. near at hand. Beside the couch was a wooden chair. On the angle of the back hung a very seedy and disreputable hard felt hat, which the worse for wear and cracked in several places. That's mainly a hardware issue. If what you're saying is true, might want to get some compressed air dusters. I mean, yeah, I figure it's probably a hardware issue. Probably need to fix something up, but the main thing is that you'd think it'd reflect even higher in the VOD, but it didn't. And that's the weird part. Because it had reflected in the VOD before, especially when it decided to fucking execute the connection. A lens and a foreskin that blazing upon the heat of the chair suggested the hat had been suspended in a manner for a purpose of examination. Hard to pinpoint the issue unless it happens again. I mean, it happens almost every day. Whenever I'm running a game and I'm streaming it, specifically streaming, because everything else runs fine, if not better, after a Windows update recently. Which is the weirdest fucking thing. I seated myself in the armchair Oh wait, hold on. Skip some stuff. Oh, you're engaged, said I. Perhaps I interrupt you.
Not at all. I'm glad to have a friend with whom I can discuss my results. The matter is a perfectly trivial one.
He jerked his thumb in the direction of the old hat.
There are points in connection with it which are not entirely devoid of interest, and even of instruction.
I seated myself in his armchair and warmed my hands before the crackling fire, for a sharp frost had set in. The windows were thick with the ice crystals. I supposed, I remarked, that homely as it looks, the thing had some deadly story linked onto it, that it is the clue that which will guide in solution of some mystery or and the punishment of some crime.
No crime, said Sherlock Holmes, laughing. Only one of those whimsical little incidents which will happen when you have 4 million human beings all jostling each other within the space of a few square miles. Amid the action and reaction of so dense a swarm of humanity, every possible combination of events may be expected to take place, and many a little will be present which may be as striking and bizarre without being criminal. We have already had experience of such.
So much but so I remarked that of the last 6 cases which I have added to my notes, those 3 have been entirely free of any legal crime.
Precisely. You allude to my attempt to recover the Iron Adler papers. The singular case in Miss Mary Stuttler to the adventure of the man with the twisted lip. I have no doubt this small matter will fall to the same innocent category. You know Petterson, the commissionaire.
Oh, yes, it is him that this trophy belongs. It is his hat.
No, he found it. Its owner is unknown. I beg that you will look upon it. It is not as battered billycocked, but as a battered billycock.
What the fuck does that mean? I read it right this time and I don't know what that means. What? I'm too much immature for this sometimes. What does that mean? At least it ain't as bad as Lovecraft. What is a battered billycock? Usage of battered billycock. It's got to be some slang for like criminal evidence or something. Meaning we have no meaning for battered billycock in our records. Thanks. The other ones are just showing spoilers for this case that I don't want to read. A billycock means a British feather or hat. A battered billycock thus means a hat that has been overused or damaged. Thank you. Who names these things?
And first, as to how it came here, it arrived upon Christmas morning, in company of a good fat goose, which is, I have no doubt, roasting at the moment in front of Peterson's fire.
Why, Ralph called me a flat-footed Bobby.
The fact are, these, about 4 o'clock on Christmas morning, Peterson, who, as you know, is a very honest fellow, returned from some small jollification and was making his way homeward down Tottenham or Tottenham Court Road. Who names these?
Pip pip, tea and crumpets. God. I know this is British. Come on. Then again, not like it's too far off from all the weird ass words we keep running into. Quit using ejaculated as a word for an excited shout out or movement. Please cease. Please cease using that as a verb or for violent movement. Cease! Sorry, I'll continue.
In front of him he saw, in the gaslight, a tallish man, walking with a slight stagger, carrying a white goose slung under his shoulder. As he reached the corner of God Street, a row broke out between the stranger and a little knot of roughs. One of the latter knocked off the man's hat, which he raised his stick to defend himself, swinging it over his head, smashed the shop window behind him. Peterson had rushed forward to protect the stranger from his assailants, but the man, shocked at having broken the window and seeing an unofficial looking person in uniform rushing towards him, dropped his goose and took to his heels, vanished amid the labyrinth of small streets which lay at the back of Tottenham and Court Road. The roofs had also fledged the appearance of Peterson, so that he was left in the possession of the field of battle, all the spoils of victory, the shape of a battered hat, and a most unimpeachable Christmas goose.
I wonder how goose tastes. Which he surely restored to its owner. Yeah, sure.
My dear fellow, there lies the problem. Is in fact that for Mrs. Henry Baker was printed upon a small card which tied to the bird's left leg. It's also true the initials HB was legible upon the lining of the hat. As there are thousands of Bakers and some hundreds of Henry Bakers in this city of ours, not easy to restore lost property to any one of them.
What then did Mr. Peterson do?
He brought around both hat and goose to me on Christmas morning, knowing that even the smallest problem are of interest to me. The goose we retained until this morning, when there were signs that in spite of the slight frost, it would be well that it should be eaten without necessary delay. His finders had carried it off, therefore to fulfill the ultimate destiny of a goose, which I continued to retain the hat of the unknown gentleman who lost his Christmas dinner.
Poor guy. Fucking lost his fucking meal. Did he not advertise?
No.
Then what clue could you have to his identity?
Only as much as we can deduce.
From his hat.
Precisely.
You are joking. What can you gather from this old battered felt? Watson, 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 Watson. No, this is 19th century London. This is food for the week. I mean, usually it might be as food for the week, but it is Christmas, or was Christmas at the time of this particular thing. So it might have just been for the one meal in this exact case. Where was I? All right. I was reprimanding Watson. Watson, 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 Watson. What part of anything you've ever known Holmes do you not think there's not a lot more that he can deduce from this fucking hat? Do you not remember all the times he's deduced everything about you or someone else and simply ended it with,
It is simplicity itself. Use my lens. You know my methods. What can you gather yourself as to the individuality of the man who's worn this article?
I took the tattered object in my hand, turned it over rather profusely. It was a very ordinary black hat of the usual round shape, hard and much the worse for wear. The lining had been of red silk, was a good deal discolored. There was no maker's name, but as Holmes had remarked, the initials H.B. were scrawled upon one side. It was pierced in the brim for a hat securer, but the elastic was missing. The rest it was cracked, extremely dusty, and spotted in several places, though there seemed to have been some attempt to hide the discolored patches by smearing them with ink. I see nothing, said I, handing it back to my friend. Oh boy, here we go.
On the contrary, Watson, you see everything. You fail, however, to reason from what you see. You are too timid to draw your inferences.
Then pray tell me, what is it that you can infer from this? Oh boy, we're gonna have it. It's gonna be a classic Holmes here. He picked it up, gazed at it in a particular introspective fashion which is characteristic of him.
It's perhaps less suggestive than it might have been,
he remarked.
Yet there are a few instances which are very distinct. A few others which represent at least a strong balance of probability. The man was highly intellectual. It is, of course, obvious from the face upon it. Also, he is fairly well-to-do within the last 3 years, although he had not fallen upon evil days. He had foresight, but has less now than formerly, pointed to a moral retrogression which has taken to the decline of his fortune, which seems to indicate some evil influence, probably drink, at work upon him. This may account also for the obvious fact that his wife has ceased to love him.
Fucking hell! What a way to end that observation.
I diagnose him with lack of bitches.
My dear Holmes!
He has, however, retained some degree of self-respect.
He continued, disregarding my aim. I was just constantly kicked out. Disregarding my remonstrance.
He's a man who has led a sedentary life, going out little, is out of training, entirely in the middle age, has good hair, which he has cut within the last few days. We had tonings with lime cream, or with anoints with lime cream. There are the most patent facts which are to be deduced from this hat. Also, by that it is extremely improbable that he has gas lead on in his home.
You are certainly joking, Holmes.
Not in the least. It is possible that even now, when I give these results, you are unable to see how they are obtained.
Please say the line, say the line, say the line. I have no doubt that I am very stupid, but I must confess that I am unable to follow you. For example, how did you deduce the man was an intellectual? For answer, Holmes clapped the hat upon his head, came right over the forehead and settled upon the bridge of his nose.
It's a question of cubic capacity,
said he.
A man with so large a brain must have something in there.
Circumstantial. The decline of his fortune, then.
This hat is 3 years old. The flap brim's cold, the edge came in, and then. It is a hat of the very best quality. Look at the band of ribbed silk, the excellent lining, This man could afford to buy so expensive a hat 3 years ago, and has had no hat since. They had surely gone down the world.
Well, that is clear enough, certainly. How about the foresight and moral regression?
Sherlock Holmes laughed. Here's the foresight, said he, putting his finger upon the little disc and loop of the hat securer. They are never sold upon hats. This man ordered one. It is sign of a certain amount of foresight, since he went out of his way to take this precaution against the wind. Since we see he has broken the elastic and has not troubled to replace it, it's obvious he has less foresight now than formerly, which is distinct proof of a weakening nature. On the other hand, he has endeavored to conceal some of the stains upon the felt by dabbing them with ink, which sign he has not entirely lost his self-respect.
The reasoning is certainly plausible.
The further points that he is middle-aged, his hair is grizzled, he is recently cut, the useless line cream are all to be gathered from a close examination of the lower part of the lining. The lens discloses a large number of hair ends and clean cut by the scissors of the barber. They all appear to be adhesive, and there is a distinct odor of line cream. This dust, you will observe, is not the gritty dust of the street, but the fluffy brown dust the house, showing that it has been hung up indoors most of the time, while the marks of moisture upon the inside are proof positive that the wearer perspires very freely, and could therefore hardly be in the best of training.
But his wife, he said she had ceased to love him.
Yes, I diagnosed him with no bitches. What about it? I just know things, okay?
No, please do explain.
Fine. That had not been brushed for weeks. When I see you, my dear Watson, with a week's accumulation of dust upon your hat, and when your wife allows you to go out in such a state, I shall fear that you also are unfortunate enough to lose your wife's affection.
He's gonna see. Sherlock Holmes is gonna see this. She's like, "Hey, is everything okay at home?"
But he might be a bachelor. Nay, he was bringing.
Stop! He's already dead.
He might be a bachelor. Nay, he's bringing home the goose as a peace offering to his wife. Remember the card upon the bird's leg.
You haven't answered everything. But how on earth did you deduce the gas is not laid in his house?
One tallow, stain, or even two, might come by chance when I see no less than 5. I think there can be little doubt the individual has been brought into frequent contact with a burning tallow. Walks upstairs at night, probably with his hat in one hand and a guttering candle in the other. Anyhow, can never go tell a stain from a gas jet. Are you satisfied?
Well, it is very ingenious, said I, laughing, since, as you said just now, there is no crime committed, no harm done save the loss of a goose. All this seems to be rather a waste of energy. Sherlock Holmes had opened his mouth to reply when the door flew open, and Peterson, the commissionaire, her head rushed into the apartment with flushed cheeks, the face of a man dazed with astonishment. "The goose, Mr. Holmes! The goose, sir! What, has it absconded?" No, I made that part up.
What of it then? Has it returned to life and flapped off through the kitchen window?
Holmes twisted. Fuck you, Holmes, I made that joke. Holmes twisted himself around the sofa to see a fairer view of the man's excited face. "See here, sir! See what my wife found! Owning its crop!" He held out his hand, displayed upon the center of a palm of brilliantly what is that word? See, this is probably a gemstone word. Sequintenion or sec Here, you can have it. I'm gonna look it up. CINT Top option. All right. Scintillating, sparkling or shining brightly, brilliantly and excitingly clever or skillful. That word, blue stone, rather than smaller than a bean in size, but of such purity and radiance that it twinkled like an electric point in the dark hollow of his hand. Sherlock Holmes sat up with a whistle.
"By Jove, Peterson," said he, "this is a treasure trove, indeed. I suppose you know what you have got."
A diamond, sir, a precious stone. It cuts into glass as though it was putty.
More than a precious stone, it is the precious stone.
Not the Countess of Marco's blue carbuncle. Oh wait, no, that's not the. Sorry, I thought that was the other guy. Not the Countess's of Marco's blue carbuncle. I ejaculated. God damn it, Watson! It's always you. Basically, sparkly. All I can think of is that his writing would have gone over 90% of Londoners at the time. Also, god damn it, it's always fucking Watson. It's always Watson. And one time it was Holmes. It's always Watson who uses that verb. Cease!
Precisely.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Precisely. So I also know its size and shape, seeing that I read the advertisement about it in the Times every day lately.
Watson Yammer.
Its absolute uniqueness and its value can only be conjectured, but the reward offered is £1,000 is certainly not within a 20th part of the market price.
£1,000! Good Lord of mercy! The commissionaire plumped down to the chair and stared from one unto the other of us.
That is the reward. I have reason to know there are sentimental considerations in the background which would induce the Countess to part with half her fortune if she could not but recover the gem.
It was lost, if I remember. But all right, at the Hotel Cosmopolitan. There, Cosmopolitan. I remarked.
Precisely. So on December 2nd, just 5 days ago, John Horner, a plumber who was accused of having interacted with the lady's jewel case, the evidence against him was so strong, the case has been referred to the assessors.
Assessors? Assizes? Assizers? Assizers? I don't know.
I have come to the matter here, I believe.
He rummaged amid his newspapers, glancing over the date, until at least he smoothed one out, doubled it over, and read the following paragraph.
Hotel Cosmopolitan, jewel robbery, John Horner, 26, plumber, was brought up upon the charge of having upon the 22nd instant.
Assizer is basically a court. Ah. I was assuming it was some sort of collector, but I think civil and criminal law. Yeah. Thank you. I wish I knew how to pronounce it properly, but we're moving on.
In the second instant, extracted from the jewel case of the Countess of McCoy, the valuable jewel known as the Blue Carbuncle, James Ryder, upper attendant at the hotel, gave his evidence to the effect that he had shown Horner up to the dressing room of the Countess of McCoy upon the day of the robbery, in order that he might solder the second bar of the grate which was loose, or he might solder the second bar of the grate which is loose. He had remained with Horner some little time when he had finally called away. On returning, he found that Horner had disappeared, that the bureau had been forced open, the small morocco casket in which it afterwards transpired the Countess was accustomed to keep her jewels, lying empty upon the dressing table. Ryder instantly gave the alarm, and Horner was arrested the same evening. The stone could not be found either upon his person or in his rooms. Catherine Cusket, maid to the Countess, deposed to having heard Ryder's cry of dismay on discovering the robbery, to having rushed into the room where he found matters as described by the last witness. Inspector Bradstreet, B Division, gave evidence as to the arrest of Horner, who struggled frantically and protested his innocence in strongest terms. Evidence of a previous conviction for robbery had been given against the prisoner. The magistrate refused to deal summarily with the offence, but referred it to the assizers. Horner, who had shown signs of intense emotion during the proceedings, fainted away at the conclusion and was carried out of court. So much for the police court, said Holmes, thoughtfully tossing aside the paper. The question for us now is to solve the sequence of events leading from the rightful jewel case to the end of the crop of a goose and Tottenham Court Road at the other.
So, I'm going to take a guess right now, is that whatever dumping spot that the thief used, whether it was Horner or not, whatever dumping spot was used, it was amongst the geese that were to be sold for Christmas dinners, and one of the geese swallowed it, because a goose is gonna goose. That's my guess here. And so this random dude ended up with it.
The crop of geese and Tottenham Court Road and the other. You see, Watson, a little deduction has suddenly assumed as much more important and less innocent aspect. Here is the stone. The stone came from the goose. The goose came from Mr. Henry Baker, the gentleman with that bad hat, and all the other characteristics which I have bored you. So now we must set ourselves very seriously to finding the gentleman and ascertaining what part he has to play in this little mystery. To do this, we must try the simplest means first, and there lies undoubtedly an advertisement in all the evening papers. If this fails, I shall have recourse to the other methods. What will you say? Give me a pencil and that slip of paper. Nothing. Found the corner of Garden Street, a goose in a black flat hat. Mr. Henry Baker. Can have the same by applying at 6:30 this evening at 21B or 2021 B Baker Street. This is
or 221 or 221B. I was like, what's the shorthand? Oh, but I gotta jump out now. Girlfriend's gonna go home soon. Gotta work on dinner. Watch you later, Doppel. Hope computer problems get resolved soon. Alright, thanks for stopping by, Mr. Mustache. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And thank you so much for stopping by. It was lovely to have you. Alright, back to the story.
Hey, but will he see it? Well, he used to sure to keep an eye on the paper, since to be a poor man the loss was a heavy one. He was clearly so scared by his mischance in breaking the window and by the approach of Peterson, he thought nothing but flight, since he might have bitterly regretted the impulse which caused him to drop his bird. Then again, the introduction of his name will cause him to see it, for everyone who knows him will direct his attention to it. Here you are, Peterson. Run down to the advertising agency. Have this put in the evening papers.
And which,
sir? Oh, the Globe Star, Pall Mall, St. George Gazette, Evening News, Standard Echo, and any others that occur to you.
Why, well, sir, in this stone?
Yes, I shall keep the stone. Thank you. And I say, Peterson, just buy a goose on your way back. Leave it here with me. We must have one to give to the gentleman in place of the one which your family is now devouring.
The commissioner had gone. Holmes took up the stone and held it against the light.
A bonny thing, said he. You see how it glints and sparkles. Of course, it is the nucleus and focus of the crime. Every good stone is. They're the devil's pet baits. As the larger and older jewels, every facet must stand for a bloody deed. The stone is not yet 20 years old. It was found on the banks of the Amory River in southern China. Remarkable in having every characteristic of the carbuncle, save that it is blue in shade instead of ruby red. In spite of its youth, it's already a sinister history. There have been 2 murders, a ritual throwing, and a suicide, and several robberies brought about for the sake of a 40 in weight of crystallized charcoal. Who could think that so pretty a toy'd be a purveyor to the gallows and the prison? I locked it up in my strong box and dropped a line to the Countess to say we have it. Do you think that
Do you think this man Horner is innocent?
cannot tell?
Well then, do you imagine that this other one, Henry Baker, has anything to do with the matter?
It is, I think, much more likely that Henry Baker is an absolutely innocent man, with no idea that the bird which he is carrying was considerably more value than it were made of solid gold. That, however, I shall determine by a simple test if we have an answer to our advertisement.
And you can do nothing until then.
Nothing.
In that case, I shall continue my professional round, but I shall come back in the evening at the hour you have mentioned, for I should like to see a solution of so tangled a business.
Very glad to see you. I dine at 7. There is a woodcock, I believe. By the way, in view of recent occurrences, perhaps I ought to ask Mrs. Hudson to examine its crop.
I had been delayed at a case, and it was a little 6:30 when I found myself in Baker Street once more. As I approached the house, I saw a tall man in a Scotch bonnet, with a coat which had buttoned up to his chin, waiting outside in the bright semicircle which thrown from the fanlight. As I arrived, the door was open. We were shown up together to Holmes's room.
Mr. Henry Baker, I believe,
said he, rising from his armchair and greeting the visitor with the easy air of a geniality which he could so readily assume.
Pray, take this chair by the fire. Mr. Baker, it is cold tonight, and I observe that your circulation's more adept for summer than for winter. Ah, Watson, you've come at just the right time. Is that your hat, Mr. Baker?
Yes, sir, that's undoubtedly my hat. He was a large man with rounded shoulders, a massive head, and a broad and intelligent face sloping down, and a pointed beard of grizzled brown. A touch of red in nose and cheek, with a slight tremor of his extended hand, recalled Holmes' surmise as to his habits. His rusty black frock coat was buttoned right up in front, with the collar turned up, and his leg wrist protruding from the sleeve with the sign of a cuff or shirt. He spoke in a slow staccato fashion, choosing his words with care, and gave the impression generally of a man of learning and letters, who had ill usage of the hand of fortune.
We've retained these things for some days. Were we expecting to see an advertisement from you giving out your address? I am at a loss to know now why you did not advertise.
Our visitor gave a rather shamefaced laugh. Shillings haven't been so plentiful with me as they once were, he remarked. No doubt the gang of roughs who assaulted me had carried off both Molly and Burn, nor care to spend any more money in a hopeless attempt by recovering them.
Very naturally. By the way, about the bird, we were compelled to eat it.
To eat it? Our visitor half rose from the chair in his excitement.
Yes, it would have been of no use to anyone had we not done so. But I presume that this other goose upon the sideboard, which is about the same weight and perfectly fresh, will answer your purpose equally well.
Oh, certainly, certainly, answered Mr. Baker with a sigh of relief.
Of course, we still have the feathers, legs, crops, and so on of your own bird, so if you wish.
The man burst out in a hearty laughter. That might be useful to me as a relic of my adventure, said he, but beyond that, I hardly see what the use of it. Disca, a member of my late acquaintance, is going to be to me. No, sir, I think, with your permission, I'll confine my attention to the excellent bird which I perceive upon the sideboard. Sherlock glanced sharply across at me with a slight shrug of his shoulders.
There is your hat, then, and there is your bird. By the way, would it bore you to tell me where you got the other from? I am somewhat of a foul fencer. I've seldom seen a better ground goose.
Certainly, said Baker, who had risen and tucked his newly gained property under his arm. There are a few of us who frequent the Alpha Inn near Museum. We are in the Founder Museum itself during the day, you understand. This year our good host
Otwenge by name, instituted by a goose club, by which on consideration of a few pence each every week, we each receive a bird at Christmas. My pence was duly paid, and the rest is familiar to you. I am much indebted to you, sir, for the Scottish bonnet is fitted either to my years nor my gravity. Mechanical promptness of manner. He bowed solemnly to both of us and strode off upon his way.
So much for Mr. Henry Baker,
said Holmes when he had closed the door behind him.
It is quite certain he knows nothing whatsoever about the matter. Are you hungry, Watson?
Not particularly.
I suggest we turn our dinner into supper and follow up this clue while it's still hot.
By all means. It was a bitter night, so we drew on our ulsters and wrapped cravats about our throats. Outside, the stars were shining coldly in a cloudless sky, and the breath of passers-by blew out into smoke like so many pistol shots. Our footfalls rang out crisply and loudly as we swung through the doctor's quarters, Wimpole Street, Harley Street, and through Wigmore Street into Oxford Street. In a quarter of an hour, when we were in Bloomsbury, at the Alpha Inn, and in a small public house at the corner of one of the streets ran down into Holborn. Holmes pushed open the door of the private bar and ordered 2 glasses of beer from the ruddy-faced, white-aproned landlord.
Your beer should be excellent if it's as good as your geese,
said he. My geese? The man seemed surprised.
Yes, I was speaking only half an hour ago to Mr. Henry Baker, the member of Goose Club.
Yes, but you see, sir, them not our geese.
Indeed. Whose then?
Well, I got 2 dozen from a salesman in Covent Garden.
Indeed? I knew some of them. Which was it?
Breckenridge is his name.
I don't know him. Well, yes, you're a good health, landlord. Prosperity in your house. Good night. Now for Mr. Breckenridge,
he continued, buttoning up his coat. We came out to the frosty air.
Remember, Watson, though we have so homely a thing as a goose at one end of the chain, we have at the other a man who will certainly get 7 years penal servitude unless we can establish his innocence. It is possible our inquiry may but confirm his guilt, but in any case we have a line of investigation which has been missed by the police, and which a singular chance has been placed in our hands. Let us follow it to the bitter inn. Face it to the south end, in quick march.
We passed across Holborn, and down Eldon Street, and through a zigzag of slums to the Covent Garden Market. One of the largest stalls bore the name of Breckenridge, and upon it the proprietor, a horsey-looking man, with a sharp face, trimmed side whiskers, was helping a boy put up the shutters.
Good evening. It's a cold night,
said Holmes. The salesman nodded and shot a questioning glance at my companion. So that
a geese, I see,
continued Holmes, pointing at the bare slab of marble. Yeah, you have 500 tomorrow morning. Or let you have 500 tomorrow morning.
That's no good.
Well, this are some on the stalls with the gas flare.
Those recommended to you.
By.
Landlord of the Alpha.
Yes, send him a couple dozen.
Fine birds they were, too. Now, where did you get them?
My surprise, the question provoked a burst of anger from the salesman. Now then, mister, said he with the head cocked and armed akimbo. What are you driving at? Let's have it straight then.
Straight enough. I'd like to know who sold you the geese which you supplied to Alpha.
Well then, I shan't tell you, so now.
It was a matter of no importance, but I don't know why you would be so warm over such a trifle.
Warm? You bees warm, maybe if you were as pestered as I am. When I pay good money for a good article, there should be an end of the business. But it's, where are the geese? Who did you sell the geese to? What will you take for the geese? One would think there was only geese in the world to hear the fuss that is made over them.
Well, I have no connection with any other people with whom you have been making inquiries,
said Holmes carelessly.
If you won't tell us, the bet is off, and that is all. And I'm always ready to back my opinion on a matter of fowl. Now I have a fiver on it that the bird I ate, it's country bred.
Well, then you lost your fiver, for it's town bred, snapped the salesman.
It's nothing of the kind.
I say it is.
I don't believe it.
Do you think you know more than a fowl than I am? Who you handled them ever since I was a nipper? Tell you, all these birds that were in the alpha were town bred.
You'll have never persuaded me to believe that.
Well, you bet on it.
Merely taking your money, for I know that I am right. Well, I'll have a salad on you just to teach you not to be obstinate.
The salesman chuckled grimly. Bring me the books, Bill, said he. The small boy brought around a small thin volume and a great greasy backed one, laying them out together beneath the hanging lamp. Now then, Mr. Cockshare, said the salesman, I thought that I was out of geese. Before I finish you, you'll find there's still one left in my shop. See this little book?
Well,
that's the list of the folks from which I buy. Do you see? Well, here in this page are the country folks. Numbers of their names will where their accounts are on the big ledger. Now then, see this other one in red ink? Well, that is the list of my town supplier. Look on that third name. Just read it out to me.
Mrs. Oxshott, 11 Bricken Street, East Road, 49.
Read Holmes. Quite so. Turn that up in the ledger. Holmes turned to the page indicated.
Here you are, Mrs. Oxshott, 117 Brixton Road, Egg and Poultry Supplier.
Well then, what's the last entry?
December 22nd, 24 geese and 7S, 6D.
Quite so. There you are. And underneath,
sold to Mr. Wingate at the Alpha at 12 sovereign.
Oh, the 24 geese were 7 sovereign and 6 pennies. What do you have to say now? Sherlock Holmes looked deeply chagrined. He drew a sovereign from his pocket and threw it down upon the slab, turning away with the air of a man whose disgust is too deep for words. A few yards off he stopped under a lamp-post, laughed in the hearty, noiseless fashion which was peculiar to him.
When you see a man with whiskers of that cut, and the pinkum protruding out of the pocket, you always draw him in by a bet, said he. I dare say if I put £100 down in front of that man, the man would not have given me such complete information as was drawn from him by the idea that he was doing me on a wager. Well, Watson, we are, I fancy, nearing the end of our quest. The only point which remains to determine in which we should go on to this Mrs. Oxshott tonight, or whether we should reserve it for tomorrow. Clear from what that surly fellow said, there are others besides ourselves that are anxious about the matter, and I should.
His remarks were suddenly cut short by a loud hubbub, which broke out from the stall we had just left. Turning round, we saw a little rat-faced fellow standing in the center of the circle of the yellow light, thrown by the swinging lamp, while Breckenridge, the salesman, framed in the door of his stall, was shaking his fist fiercely at the cringing figure. I've had enough of you and your geese, he shouted. I wish you were all at the devil together. If you come pestering me any more of your silly talk, I'll set the dog on you. You bring Mrs. Oxshott here, and I'll answer her. But what have you do with it? Did I buy the geese off you? No, but one of them was mine all the same, whined the little man. Well then, go ask Oxshott for it. She told me to ask you. Well, you can ask the king of Peshawar, for all I care. I've had enough of it. Get out of this. He rushed fiercely forward, and the inquirer flitted away into the darkness. Ha! This may save us a visit to... Oh, wait, no, sorry. This is Holmes' line.
This may save us a visit to Brixton Road,
whispered Holmes.
Come with me. We'll see what is made of this fellow.
Running through the scattered knot of people who lodged round for the flurried stalls, my companion speedily overtook the little man, and touched him upon the shoulder. He sprang round, and I could see the gas light that every vestige of colour had been driven from his face. How are you? What do you want? He asked in a quivering voice.
You'll excuse us, said Holmes blandly, and I could not help overhearing the questions which you put to the salesman just now. I think I could be of assistance.
You? Who are you? What could you know anything of the matter?
My name is Sherlock Holmes. It's my business to know what other people don't know.
But you can know nothing of this,
Excuse me, I know everything of his. You were due to trace some geese which were sold by Mrs. Oxshott of Brixton Road to a salesman named Breckenridge, by him in turn to Mr. Wingate of the Alpha, by him to his club, of which Mr. Henry Baker is a member.
Oh, sir, you are very a man who I have longed to meet, cried the little fellow with outstretched hands and quivering finger. Hardly explain to you how interested I am in this matter. Sherlock Holmes hailed a four-wheeler which had passed.
In that case, we'd better discuss it in a cozy room rather than a wide little wind-swept marketplace. Pray tell me, before we go further, who's it I have the pleasure of assisting?
The man hesitated for a moment. My name is John Robinson, he answered with a sidelong glance.
No, your real name, said Holmes sweetly. It was always awkward doing business with an alias.
A flush sprang from the white cheeks of the stranger. Well then, said he, my real name's James Ryder.
Precisely so. Head attendant of the Hotel Cosmopolitan. Pray step into the cab. I shall soon be able to tell you everything which you would wish to know.
The little man stood glancing from one to the other of us with half-frightened, half-hopeful eyes, as one who is not sure whether he is on the verge of a windfall or of a catastrophe. He stepped into the cab, and in half an hour we were back in the sitting-room of Baker Street. Nothing had been said during our drive. The high, thin breathing of our new companion and the clasping and unclasping of his hands spoke of the nervous tension within him.
Here we are,
said Holmes cheerily as we filed into the room.
The fire looks very seasonable in this weather. You look cold, Mr. Ryder. Pray take the basket chair. I will just put on my slippers before we settle this little matter of yours. Now then, I want to know what became of you, those geese.
Yes, sir.
Or rather, I fancy of that goose. It was one bird, I imagine, which you had interest. White, with a black bar across the tail.
Ryder quivered with emotion. Oh, sir, can you tell me where it went to?
It came here.
Here?
Yes, and a most remarkable bird it proved. I don't wonder that you should take an interest in it. Laid an egg after it was dead. The bonniest, brightest little blue egg that ever did seen. I have it in my museum.
Our visitor staggered to his feet, clutched the mantelpiece with his right hands. Holmes unlocked his strong box and held out the blue carbuncle, which shone out like a star, the cold brilliant. In many-pointed radiance, Ryder stood glaring with a drawn face, uncertain whether to claim or disown it.
The game's up, Ryder,
said Holmes quietly.
Hold up, man, or you'll be into fire.
Giving him an arm back into the chair. Watson, or
hold up, man, or you'll be into the fire. Give him an arm back into his chair, Watson. He's not got blood enough to go in for a felony with impunity. Give him a dash of brandy. So, now he looks a little more human. What a shrimp it is, to be sure.
For a moment he had staggered and nearly fallen. The brandy brought a tinge of color to his cheeks, and he sat staring with frightened eyes at his accusers.
I have almost every link in my hand, all the proof of which I could possibly need, so there is little which you need to tell me. Still, that little may as well be cleared up to make the case complete. You have heard, Ryder, of this blue stone of the Countess of Montcourt.
It was Kathleen Cutcus who told me of it, said he in a crackling voice.
I see. Her ladyship's waiting maid. Well, the temptation of sudden wealth, so easily acquired, was too much for you, as it had been for better men before you. But you were not very scrupulous in the means you used. It seems to me, Ryder, that it was making a very pretty villain in you. You knew that this man Horder, the plumber, had been concerned in some such matter before, and that suspicion would rest the most readily upon him. What did you do then? You made some small job in my lady's room, you and your confederate Cossack, and you managed that he should be the man sent for, and then he had left you with fire. Then, when he had left you, you rifled the jewel case, raised the alarm, and had this unfortunate man arrested. And then,
Ryder threw himself down suddenly upon the rug, clutching my companion's knee. For God's sake, have mercy! He shrieked. Think of my father, of my mother, break their hearts.
Never wrong before, never will again, I swear. I'll swear it on a Bible. Oh, don't bring it into court, for Christ's sake, don't!
Get back in your chair, said Holmes sternly. You very well to cringe and crawl now. You thought little enough of this poor owner in the dock for a crime of which he knew nothing.
I'll fly, Mr. Holmes. I will leave the country, sir. Then the charge against him will break down.
We will talk about that. And now let us hear a true account of the next act. How came the stone into the goose, and how came the goose into the open market? Tell the truth, for there lies your only hope and safety.
Ryder passed his tongue over his parched lips.
I will tell you it just as it happened, sir, said he. An owner had been arrested. It seemed to me that it would be best for me to get away with the stone at once, for I did not know at the moment the police might not take it into their heads to search me in my room. There was no place for hotel work can be made safe. I went out as if on some commission, made for my sister's house. She had married a man named Oakshott, lived in Brixton Road, when she fattened fowl for the market. All the way there every man I met seemed to be I met seemed to me to be a policeman or detective, and for all that it was a cold night, the sweat was pouring down my face before I came to Brixton Road. My sister asked me what the matter was and why I was so pale, but I told her that I had been upset by the jewel robbery at the hotel. I went to the backyard, smoked a pipe, wondered what would be best to do. I had a friend named Musley who went to the bad and has just been serving his time in Pentonville. One day he had met me and fell into talk about the ways of thieves, how they could get rid of what they stole. Knew he would be true to me, for I knew one or two things about him, so I made up my mind to go right on to Kilburn, where he lived, take him into confidence. When he showed me how to turn the stone to money, how to get him to safety, thought of the agonies I had gone through coming in from the hotel, might at any moment be seized and searched. That would be the stone in my waistcoat pocket. I was leaning against the wall at the time, and looking at the geese which was wandering around on my feet. Suddenly the idea came to my head which showed me how I could beat the best detective that ever lived. My sister had told me some weeks before that I might have the pick of her geese for a Christmas present. I knew that she was always as good as her word. I would take my geese now, and then I would carry my stone home to Kilburn, a little shed in the yard. Behind this I drove one of the birds, a fine big one, white with a bar tail. Caught it, pried the bill open, thrust the stone down its throat as far as my fingers could reach. Bird gave it a gulp, felt the stone pass through the gullet, down its corp. But the creatures flapped and struggled. Now came my sister to know what the matter. I turned to her to speak to the brute, broke loose, fluttered off among the others. What are you doing with that bird? Jim, she said. Well, said I, you said I could give me one for Christmas. I was feeling which was the fattest. Oh, she said, we've set yours aside for you, Jim's bird, we call it. Big white one over yonder. 26 of them. Makes one for you, one for us, 2 dozen for the market. Thank you, Maggie, said I. If it's all the same to you, I'd rather have the one I was handling just now. The other's good 3 pounds heavier, she said. We fattened it expressly for you.
Damn, whenever people care about you actually ruin your criminal plan.
Oh, just as... Never mind, I'll have the other. I'll take it now, said I. Oh, just as you like. Like she said, she is a little huff. Which is it you want then? White one, bar tail, right in the middle flock. Oh, very well. Kill it and take it with you. Well, I did what she said. Mr. Holmes, I carried the bird all the way to Kilburn, told my pal what I had done, for he was a man easy to tell a thing like that. Laughed until he choked, got a knife, opened the goose, heart turned to water with no sign of the stone, though that some terrible mistake had occurred. Left the bird, rushed back to the sisters, hurried to the yard. There was not a bird to be seen. Where are they all, Maggie? I cried. Gone to the dealer, Jim. Which dealer? Brickman Ridge at Covent Garden. There's another with barred tails, same as the one I chose. Yes, Jim, there are 2 barred tail ones. Could never tell them apart. Oh, then of course I saw it all. And I ran off as hard as my feet could carry me to this man Brickman, but he had sold the lot at once.
Not one word would he tell me as to where they had gone. He had heard them. You had heard them yourself tonight. Well, he had always answered me like that. My sister thinks I'm going mad. Sometimes I think I am myself. And now I'm myself a branded thief, and I ever haven't touched the wealth for which I had sold my character. God help me! God help me! He burst into convulsive sobbing, with his feet buried in his hands. There was a long silence, broken only by the heavy breathing and by the measured tapping of Sherlock Holmes' fingertip that's upon the edge of the table. My friend rose and threw open the door.
"Get out,"
said he. What, sir? Oh, heaven bless you!
"No more words. Get out."
And no more words were needed. There was a rush and a clatter upon the stairs, bang of a door and the crisp rattle of a running footfalls from the street.
"After all, Watson,"
said Holmes, reaching up for his hand with the clay pipe,
"I am not retained by the police to supply their deficiencies. If order were in danger, it'd be another thing. This fellow will not appear against him. The case must collapse. I suppose I am committing a felony, but it's just possible I am saving a soul. This fellow will not go wrong again. He is too terribly frightened. Send him to gaol now, or send him to jail now, and you'll make him a jailbird for life. Besides, the season of forgiveness. Chance has put it on our way a most singular and whimsical problem. Its solution is its own reward. If you will have the goodness to touch the bell, Doctor, we'll begin another investigation, in which also a bird is to be a chief feature."
All right. Well, my throat is starting to wane, so I think I'll end things there for today. So, I hope you enjoyed this. It's because I enjoy doing this from time to time. So, I'd like to wish you all a fond farewell, and thank you for stopping by. If you like this, of course, follow me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing, because it really helps me out. Shameless plug for Ko-Fi and Throne, I have those. But until next time, fare thee well.